Canto 3, Chapter 9, texts 27 through 29. I'll read 27 and 28 and the purport, and then we can do 29 together. But before I start, I just have this burden of gratitude, just like, anyway. And I just want, I want to, maybe not, well, I just want to share how grateful I am for all the devotees here. I mean, look at this, we got 15, 17, I don't know, I'm not going to count. I was an English major. Bunch of devotees in Srimad Bhagawatam class. I've heard that not too long ago, Srimad Bhagawatam classes were a sort of perfunctory ritual thing that we did in 10, 15 minutes and got out or something. And I mean, this is just so nice. I'm really grateful. I guess it's all going to come out. I'm really grateful for Sri Kirti and Kusha for almost demanding that I come here.
Yes.
That was a very interesting time, and I was so great. I mean, I was talking to them on, you know, Bluetooth on this winding mountain road, and that's when they began their case. You know, we want you to come here, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all the devotees who. Well, I didn't know what to expect.
Mahendra and Sukha paying your way.
Mahendra and Sukha for buying my ticket. And anyway, just, I had no idea what to expect, and what I've gotten in the last, whatever it is, 22 months or something, is something I could never have imagined. Of course, some of the things were things that I couldn't have imagined and would rather not have, but mostly it's been overwhelming, and I'm particularly grateful to the devotees who have encouraged me in so many ways, and I'm really grateful. A few months ago, when Yuvala Rasa left and we needed someone to cook the Rajbhog offerings on the weekends, I saw this big pause. No one was stepping forward, so I did. And it's been amazing, Saturdays and Sundays. A lot of work, but just wonderful support from the other devotees who helped. Nagapati actually makes it happen on Saturdays. I'm kind of her assistant. And all the other things. And the kirtans, going back out on some kirtan. Yesterday was just amazing. Anyway, I just felt this. And then when I saw the deities dress with their garlands today, especially Lord Chaitanya's garland, just kind of ripped my heart out. Anyway, so I just needed to relieve a little of that. Okay, text 27 and 28. Get off the soapbox, put the Kleenex away. Atapi pretam anviksha brahmano madhusudana vishanna cheta sankena kalpavya. This is text 27 through 29. 27 and 28. Atapi pretam anviksha brahmano madhusudana vishanna cheta sankena kalpavyati parambhasa loka samstana vijnana atmana parikidhyata tamaha ghataya vacha kashmalam shamayam niva. The Lord saw that Brahma was very anxious about the planning and construction of different planetary systems, and was depressed on seeing the devastating water. He could understand the intention of Brahma, and thus he spoke in deep, thoughtful words, removing all the illusion that had arisen. So who's speaking here? Anybody remember? From yesterday?
That's right.
Bingo. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The devastating water was so fearful that even Brahma was perturbed at its appearance and became very anxious about how to situate the different planetary systems in outer space to accommodate the different kinds of living entities, such as the human beings, those lower than the human beings, and the superhuman beings. These are not Marvel characters or DC characters. These are actual superhumans, the Devatas. All the planets in the universe are situated according to the different grades of living entities under the influence of the modes of nature. There are 3 modes of material nature, and when they are mixed with one another, they become 9. And when the 9 are mixed, they become 81. And the 81 also become mixed. Thus, we ultimately do not know how the delusion increases and decreases. In other words, it becomes incalculably complicated. Lord Brahma had to accommodate different places and situations for the requisite bodies of the conditioned souls. The task was meant only for Brahma, and no one in the universe can even understand how difficult it was. But if there's a pop quiz, this is the key. But by the grace of the Lord, Brahma was able to execute the tremendous task so perfectly that everyone is amazed to see the workmanship of the Vidhata, or the regulator. Okay, now text 29. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Ma Veda Garbha Gas Tundrim Ma Veda Garbha Gas Tundrim Sarga Udyamam Avaha Sarga Udyamam Avaha Tam Mayapaditam Hit Agre Tanmayapaditam Yagre Yan Mam Prartayate Bhavan Yan Mam Prartayate Bhavan Ma Veda Garbhagastandrim Sarga Udyam Mamavaha Tanmaya Paditam Gagre Yanmam Prartayate Bhavan Ma Veda Garbhagastandrim Sarga Udyamam Avaha Tanmaya Paditam Gagre Yanmam Prartayate Bhavan Synonyms: Sri Bhagavan Vacha. The Lord, the personality of Godhead, said. Ma, do not. Veda Garbha. O you who have the depth of all Vedic wisdom. God Dream. Become dejected. Sarge, for creation. Udyamam, enterprises. Avaha, you just undertake. Tat, that which you want. Maya, by me. Apaditam, executed. He, certainly. Agre, previously. Yat, which. Mam, from me. Prarthayate, begging. Does this word sound familiar to anyone? Should be a little familiar. When we read Nectar of Devotion, we see there are different types of prayers. One is Samprarthana. And then there's a book. This is begging for service. And then there's a book by Narottam Das Thakur called Prarthana. These are his prayers to the Lord. He's opening his heart to the Lord and asking him to fill it up, Lord Chaitanya, to fill it up with his own moods. And Bhavan, you. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead then said, O Brahma, O depth of Vedic wisdom, be neither depressed nor anxious about the execution of creation. What you are begging from me has already been granted before. Responsively, please. The Supreme Personality of Godhead then said, O Brahma, O depth of Vedic wisdom, be neither depressed nor anxious about the execution of creation. What you are begging from me has already been granted before. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Any person authorized either by the Lord or by his bona fide representative is already blessed, as is the work entrusted to him or her. Of course, the person entrusted with such a responsibility should always be aware of his incapability and must always look for the mercy of the Lord for the successful execution of his duty. One should not be puffed up because he is entrusted with certain executive work. Fortunate is he who is so entrusted, and if he is always fixed in the sense of being subordinate to the will of the Supreme, he is sure to come out successful in the discharge of his work. Arjuna was entrusted with the work of fighting on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and before he was so entrusted, the Lord had already arranged for his victory. But Arjuna was always conscious of his position as subordinate to the Lord. And thus he accepted him as his supreme guide in his responsibility. Anyone who takes pride in doing responsible work but does not give credit to the Supreme Lord is certainly falsely proud and cannot execute anything nicely. Brahma and other persons in the line of his disciplic succession who follow in his footsteps are always successful in the discharge of loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Jakrapatamam Vande Shri Gurun Dinataram Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Pancha Kalpataru Yashtra Kripa Sindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo. The Lord saw that Brahma was very anxious about the planning and construction of the different planetary systems and was depressed upon seeing the devastating water. He could understand the intention of Brahma, and thus he spoke in deep, thoughtful words, removing all the illusion that had arisen. The Supreme Personality of Godhead then said, O Brahma, O depth of Vedic wisdom, be neither depressed nor anxious about the execution of creation. What you are begging from me has already been granted before. So in his purports of 27 and 28, Srila Prabhupada points out the complexity of Brahma's task and how Brahma naturally felt overwhelmed by this. I mean, can you imagine having to organize this whole thing, the whole show? Stuff that we can't even imagine, right? So, and this was entrusted to Brahma. And only Brahma had the adhikar to do something like this. Organize a universe. Get it populated. Get it going. And even he was feeling a little overwhelmed by the immensity of the task. But Srila Prabhupada points out in his purport that by the grace of the Lord, he was able to execute it so perfectly that everyone's amazed to see his workmanship. People have been amazed by what we can perceive of the cosmos, and that's almost nothing. Since humans began to look at the sky and think and talk about what's going on here, where are we? What's the deal? But Brahma was able to pull it off without a hitch because he depended on the mercy of the Lord. So Radhesha was talking about mercy yesterday as well, and it occurred to me there are two ingredients for success: effort and mercy. We've seen plenty of references in the recent verses to Brahma's effort, meditating, taking seriously the instruction he heard in his heart from the Lord, tapa, tapa, sat down, meditated for, I don't know, millions of years, and then kind of got his marching orders, right? And then he's confronted with it and he feels a little overwhelmed. So effort and then grace, mercy. We see this also in something that we're going to be celebrating over the next few weeks during the month of Damodar or Kartik, and that's the Damodar Leela. Every day we'll sing the Damodar Ashtakam, and we'll be remembering how Mother Yashoda, not a bad chapter to read either, how Mother Yashoda went to such effort to protect Krishna. First of all, just to keep him from getting in trouble with all the neighbor ladies, she and Nanda Maharaj arranged for the very best of their 900,000 cows to graze on the very best grasses on Govardhan Hill to get the very best milk for Krishna so that he wouldn't go raiding the neighbors' larders. But, so there she is. She's got this super special milk boiling on the stove while she's nursing Krishna. And then she hears it starting to boil over. And you know what happens when you start to hear, any folks here? You know what happens when you hear the milk boiling over? Everything else shuts off, right? It's like, panic time. Otherwise, you're going to have to spend an hour and a half cleaning all that milk charcoal off of every part of the stove, under the burners and everywhere. It's a trip. Plus, you ruined the milk. So immediately she put Krishna down and jumped up to go attend to the milk. Why did that happen? Well, this was during the time when everybody was getting ready for Govardhan Puja, so the household staff wasn't there. Everybody was out making for the Indra Puja. Everyone was out making arrangements for worshipping Indra, as they did every year. So she was alone in the house taking care of Krishna and cooking the milk. She put Krishna down. Now, this is discussed at the very beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, when Rupa Goswami gives us the definition of Shuddha Bhakti or Uttama Bhakti, pure devotional service. And Yavilashi Tashinya Jnana Kamadi Navatam. Anukulyena Krishnadashila. Activity meant exclusively for Krishna's pleasure, but pleasure of his devotees as well. So Yashoda made Krishna upset by putting him down to go take care of the milk. So how's that pure devotional service? Srila Prabhupada says, we see in the next verse, Krishna understood her intention. Her intention was to serve Krishna. She put Krishna down to go take care of the special milk. So that's pure devotional service. Now, there's another note to this story. I don't remember if any of the acharyas noted it in their tikas in that chapter in the Bhagavatam, but in his Gopal Champu, which is Jiva Goswami retelling the leelas from the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, he says that Krishna was a little peeved with Indra. And this showed up when he was 7 years old, and he saw his father and everybody bustling around, trying to get everything ready for the Indra Puja. And there's this resentment from back then in Krishna's mind. And so he confronts his father. Sometimes we look at the Krishna book and we think, oh, he's so innocent and everything like that, but he's a little miffed. Father, WTH, I mean, what are you guys up to? I mean, is this something real? And then he makes all these atheistic arguments and is able to talk Nanda Maharaj out of it with these atheistic arguments, Karma Mimoksha arguments, and arrange for the Govardhan Puja. So there are all these things going on. We can't imagine how complicated it is to put together, organize, populate, and regulate, as Srila Prabhupada says at the very end of that first purport, 27 and 28, something like a universe. And this is not a very big universe. Probably not the most complicated universe. But Brahma was able to pull it off. Can you imagine how complex bhakti is? How complex life is in Goloka Vrindavan? You read some parts of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu where Srila Rupa Goswami is, these are parts that Srila Prabhupada, things that Prabhupada doesn't address because they become so thick, so nuanced, so complex, all these different kinds of bhavas combining in different ways to create rasa. You got the Sthayi bhava, you got the Sanchari or Vyabhichari bhavas, you've got the Anubhavas, the Sattvika bhavas, and there's a list, there's many lists. All these things working together, combining in more ways than we can imagine. And I've been reading through these over the last few weeks on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evenings with the devotees that get together with me to read this. And I'll stop every once in a while and say, okay, any comments, questions, reflections, insights, anything? And sometimes it's just like crickets. Well, actually, I was going to say cookies, but if I hear cookies, that means my friend Vidya Madhava has a comment because he'll turn his mic on. And where he lives is surrounded by cookie. If you live on Oahu, you probably don't have any experience of cookies because they were eradicated many years ago. But on the Big Island, not happening. It's Koki Loka. Look it up. I can't imitate their sound because it's about 6 octaves above where my range is, and really loud. The males have this mating call that starts at dusk, just before dusk, and they're loud, little tiny maybe as big as my fingernail. It's huge, super high-pitched. Anyway, it's so overwhelming. And the other day I commented, the other evening I commented that, you know, here we are, we're taking a dip in the ocean of the nectar of devotion, but it feels like we're caught in, we're swimming along, but we're caught in thick kelp or seaweed. Anybody who's surfed in California knows what I'm talking about. You paddle out, sometimes you're paddling out through this thick kelp, especially at certain parts of the year, the kelp really just kind of grows. And I just thought, this does feel a bit like a slog. And yeah, we're all a little in over our heads. You know, and if you try to figure out where the bottom is, even here, good luck with that. You know, I invited you all on a snorkeling trip, and here we are, out at sea, lost. Together, though. So it's so it's those two things: the effort and grace. Same thing with Brahma. Same thing with Arjuna. Srila Prabhupada points that out in his purport to 29. Arjuna was given a terrible job, a terrible task by Krishna. He was confronted with having to kill those who were closest to him, except for his own brothers and wives and children. But, you know, he said, okay, Krishna, please pull the chariot up between the two armies so I can survey the field and see what it is we're about to undertake. And so Krishna pulled the chariot right up in front of Bhishma and Drona, to whom Arjuna was most attached. Here you go. How about that? Rip out your deepest attachments. Just rip them out by the root. How about that? And Arjuna was like, no. And he came up with this whole list of reasons. Somebody was telling me the other day that there was a kind of, was it 3 broad categories of reasoning that he used? 4 broad categories of reasoning. And the arguments were all quite dharmic. They said, and Krishna says, yeah, it sounds good. But in this context, not so much. You just sound like a fool. You're talking high words, high philosophy, all dharmic sounding and everything like that, but you apparently don't get the gravity of this particular situation. You've got to buckle down. And he has this extended argument throughout 600 odd verses, beginning early in the 2nd chapter. First time we hear Krishna is like the 2nd verse of the 2nd chapter. And he just lights in to Arjuna and says, nope. And starts to, reasoning with him, explaining to him. And at the end he says, it's all about me. So just do what I ask and depend on me for success. Don't worry about the success. He told him earlier, the success, it's already, as Srila Prabhupada points out, it's already been taken care of. I've already taken care of it. Your success is already assured. You just have to do it. You just have to step up and take the credit for it. That's all. That's all. So, similarly, we find ourselves entrusted with different responsibilities in the course of our service, especially those who live in the temple and the community members who make it their business to help keep the temple going. We're entrusted with different responsibilities, and sometimes it seems really daunting. I mean, I think of Kusha all day, every day practically, because she's got she's got the responsibility for the temple, and she's got some family responsibilities, which are also quite challenging. And it's simply amazing. But all of us, we accept responsibility for things that they may seem a little daunting, may seem a little overwhelming. But with those 2 ingredients, effort and grace, keep remembering ourselves as servants of the Lord, always keeping that as our mindset. Yesterday, Diva was challenging me define a Krishna conscious mindset. And a mindset is a set of attitudes, values, habits and things, habits of mind that people or groups of people might have. And he says, so what is a Krishna conscious mindset? And so I said, well, keeping in mind that we're always servants of Krishna and that we're serving his mission, something like that. And then Diver came up with a verse, Vyavasayatmika buddhire keha kurunandana. And that I thought, oh yes, that's perfect. And I told him, yeah, that's perfect. It's even better. So I just thought I'd take a quick look at these two verses. There are two verses, verse 40 and 41 in the second chapter. Nehavikramo nasoshti pratyavaya navidyate svalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mantobaya. In this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Now, I've been giving some online classes on Saturday mornings, very early Saturday mornings, on the power of bhakti, and it was triggered by something that happened to me when I read one of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentaries on a Bhagavatam verse some years ago. I had this kind of explosion in my mind, in my heart actually, kind of an epiphany about how bhakti is so powerful. So this reminds me of that verse, that 19th verse in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavatam, 17th and 19th chapter verses in that 5th chapter, where Narada Muni is showing how bhakti can't even be compared with any other path. Because first of all, you have to do, in any other path, you have to do it perfectly to get real results. Karma, jnana, yoga, whatever. And then the results are temporary. So you've gone to all that trouble, and then it's gone. So this verse reminds me of that contrast that Narada Muni makes there. And then Vyavasayatmika buddhire keha kurunandana bahushaka yanantascha buddhayo vyavasayana. Says those who are on this path, the path of bhakti, are resolute in purpose and their aim is one. They're focused like a laser on that goal of satisfying Krishna. O beloved child of Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. So, I mean, this was just really, I was really appreciative that, Diva mentioned that verse as a way of looking at what a Krishna-conscious mindset is. Completely focused on pleasing Krishna and his devotees, and depending on Krishna for the ability to do so. Recognizing, as Srila Prabhupada says in his purport, our own incapacity. And we're all constantly reminded of that every day. And somehow or other, we managed to pull our service off. Look at the deeds. This is crazy. How can you create something so beautiful in an hour and a half? And then you've got the garlands. I mean, we've gone for more than a year and a half with one garland a day. I think for a while we didn't even have that. It was all the artificial garlands because everything was so pared down, and now it's crazy. So, we're able to do it by making an effort and depending on grace, just like Mother Yashoda, just like Arjuna, just like Lord Brahma. And we see what happens when that's not the case, when we lose sight of our position as subordinate to the Lord. We began working yesterday on this little, very short Govardhan Puja play that will grow out of a little Brihad Bhagavatamrita play. And I think I have probably some of what I think are the coolest lines in the play, because I get to play Brihaspati, and I get to try to put Indra in his place. And I end up telling him, he said, when I ride into battle on Airavato with my thunderbolt in hand, I said, yeah, and I cut him off, saying, yeah, you feel supreme. not. And then by telling him, you may think you're God's, you may be God's right-hand man, Indra, but you are not God. So that's our situation. We need to always be reflective enough, be introspective enough to understand that we really don't have the capability of doing these things without being empowered by Krishna and his devotees. Otherwise, who